Welcome back, everyone. We have a very exciting guest that you know that you love, and she's back for the third time. And we have exciting news about a podcast that she's going to do herself. But we'll tell you more about that later. So if you're here on YouTube, I want to make sure that you know we did a regular podcast. It's just audio, and you can take us with you. So click below under in the about section, and you'll find the link for the podcast. And if you're on the podcast and you want to see Dr. Miriam again for the third time, coming over to jjfilzanes.tv. And again, if you're finding us because you've typed in something about healing and maybe you know Dr. Rahav and you don't know me, just to give you a little hi, I'm JJ and this is my show. What that means is I'm going to talk. So if you don't like me, I will not be offended. I will totally understand. Miriam, where can they find more about you besides the podcast that we'll mention later? Where can they find out more about you if they just want you?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. It's really exciting. We're old friends now, and I really look forward to our conversation. Super excited to be here. As of now, even though we have a podcast in development, I can be found on social media, Miriam Rahav MD on Instagram. Rahav Wellness is my practice page on Facebook, and I also have my doctor self-identity person on Facebook is Miriam Rahav MD. And also we have a website, rahavwellness.com, which we try to keep updated with different, as also we create media and stuff, try to upload it there. It's a work in progress. Doctors are not necessarily also super tech savvy, although there are tech savvy doctors. I aspire to be one of them anyway.
Well, you aspire to delegate to one, I think. I don't think
you're
the content provider. Let everybody else do that other stuff.
They're so much better at it, frankly.
Right. It's not your zone of genius, nor will it ever be. So why bother? So rahavwellness.com, go to her website and you'll have all the links to all the things that she has, information about her and her nurse practitioners that work with her and the services they provide and where they're located. And they also do teleconversations and telemedicine. So don't let location stop you from reaching out. So today's topic is the 5 levels of healing. We touched upon this a little bit in our last conversation about the love languages of the body. And I thought, well, let's continue this because you were very passionate about this topic and the lessons you learned from Dr. Klinghardt and this breakdown. And so we're going to have this conversation. And for those of you that are watching and listening, it's a graphic that we'd love to share with you. So come on over to jjfilzanes.com/5 levels of healing. So again, that's jjfilzanes.com/5 levels of healing. So if you've been to my site before, you already know the jjfilzanes.com part. So all you need to remember is /5 levels of healing. And you can get the same graphic that we're going to be referring to in today's conversation. So Dr. Miriam, welcome back. Welcome back to the show. We love you. And I can't wait to learn from you.
All of Rahav Wellness, my team and me, speak for me. I love you.
Thank you. And I look forward to learning from you and so does everyone else. So let's start with your relationship with this topic and the training and what brought you to that training and a little bit about it to learn the 5 levels of healing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like the training has all been by the grace of God, the Holy Spirit, being led to where I'm meant to be led. And I was actually working in a clinic in New York City in 2014, and I met this extraordinary human being there who we immediately had a connection. She was moonlighting there doing some therapies, but her journey was one archetypally the pathway of the wounded healer. Maybe that's another podcast, the wounded healer. Anyway, she had been on her own incredible healing journey and had gone from, being legally blind to seeing and being in a wheelchair to out of a wheelchair, and just an incredible and very inspiring story. And as we connected and we started speaking, I started asking her a question about someone who had been in a impasse health-wise and was taking more and more supplements and had a more and more restrictive diet and yet felt nauseous with everything and couldn't process. And she looked right at me and she just got a download right there as I was speaking. And she said, it's parasites. And that was the beginning of a working relationship that actually hearkened me back to maybe what in my subconscious might have been an ideal working partnership in the healing arts, which is you have all of the rich data, all of the physical data, and you also have energy literacy and intuitive literacy, and that you combine them all together, and that would be so powerful. And in fact, I think it was 1996 when Christiane Northrup published her book, Women's Body, Women's Wisdom. And it was a collaborative that she wrote with Carolyn Myss. And both sides of the story were presented, the medical narrative and also the emotional and intuitive narrative. That later sparked me to study some of Carolyn Myss's work and her book, The Anatomy of the Spirit, where she brought to the forefront of my consciousness the concept that biography becomes biology. The way you say it, that I've heard you say it, is what's in the emotional body that we cannot handle becomes physical. And these are all just different ways of anchoring and cognizing this very, very important truth. Anyway, so fast forward, it's 2014. I meet this unbelievably gifted and experienced intuitive healer, and we start collaborating very closely together. Well, it turns out that the healer who was most instrumental in her healing journey was, in fact, Dietrich Klinghardt. And that's how I got introduced to his body of work, through her. And she was using his muscle testing techniques that he calls autonomic response testing. That was a diagnostic and therapeutic technique he developed with a wonderful practitioner named Louisa Williams. In any event, I started referring everyone to her, and the kind of information that would be generated would both be physical and also emotional. Sometimes what would come up, in addition to needing to take a detoxifying agent or an antiparasitic or an antiviral, would be to wear more of a certain color or to have a certain mantra or prayer. And that these could all be part of a prescription was just so incredible and exciting to me. And it became so essential for me to give someone the opportunity to experience that I could almost not see someone without recommending them to also see her. And in fact, my center grew out of this deep desire that I had to create this health collaborative where all of this information could be brought to bear on an individual. And as the life of and destiny meander, when I finally opened Rahav Wellness and we began to collaborate together, her own partner, husband, had a devastating stroke, and she was called to take care of him full time. And so what wound up happening is that, unwilling to roll back on our collective offerings, I took it upon myself to go ahead and get the training. And I've been walking this path for many years, studying the work of Dietrich Klinghardt, first indirectly through my dear colleague, and then through other folks trained by him and practicing. He was based on the West Coast largely. He still has Sophia Institute of Health in outside of Seattle. He's largely in England right now, actually. And on the East Coast, he has a wonderful teacher colleague who's based in Pennsylvania, and I go down there until eventually I was able to do immersion training with Dr. Klinghardt himself, and I guess hit this critical mass of just experience and contact where I finally felt, because I was so in awe of my colleagues, I said, I don't know, can I allow myself to do something that just seems so, but yeah, I've been doing it steadily with everyone, with most everyone. For some people, it's a little wild. I'll say it's a little out there. I ask people if they're willing to put up with my, the word in Yiddish for, being a little nuts. I say it's my mishigas, if you'll indulge me, I might gather some information that winds up being valuable. So to you and our plan of care together. So it's been a journey of using it and finding a way, especially in New York City, to do things that are a little more out there, when it's not necessarily what you expect from someone who has the two letters MD after their name.
Well, okay, and that's what you say. And I'm looking at this graphic, and this is obviously, as you know, this is my jam. And everybody who listens to this show, I can promise you, if they're still listening, if they're not new, if they know me and they trust me, this is their jam. I mean, I'm looking at the 5 levels, and literally it's, I mean, people can see behind me, the mind's, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, soul. It's this plus, I mean, there's 3 there, but this ends up being 5. I love that the pyramid aspect of it. I'd love to like dive into this and also know how you use it in your practice. Like, what are you talking about when you say, can I, bear with me as I do this with you? Like, what does that mean for somebody? Because I mean, I don't even ask permission. I just say, we're going to do this. Like, it's not, and I
Well,
know, and that's because you have certain, people expectations or whatnot, and even protocols and from your training. And I kind of have created my own methods, if you will, and just do whatever the heck I want. And I don't have to, I don't have a body that's telling me what or not to do, or if there's anything out of, whatever. But this, I'm looking at this and I'm excited to dive into it.
yeah, so let's dive in. I would say for some folks who are just listening, I'll do a little bit of a description because you also have a graphic in front of you so you can see. But for the purposes of the listener only without the visual, what we're talking about here is this incredible guide that Dr. Klinghardt created to really explain, I don't know, the sum total of the healing arts in some ways and the healing sciences, and to try and understand where these things fit in. So he has both a kind of chart with the 5 levels, and he also has a pyramid. The base of the pyramid, sorry, is the first level. That's the physical body. And that really is everything that we study in medicine, in the medicine I'm trained in as a medical doctor, as an internist. What we can sense, what we can experience at that level of touching and smelling, um, our action, our movement, our biochemistry, our mechanics. And as far as therapies on this level, those are all things that affect our physical, physical therapy or actual, um, plants, vitamins, minerals, things that actually shift our biochemistry. Um, I'm actually, as I speak to this, I'm going to see if I can toggle us so I can, because there's different things on the graphic here. Let's see.
I can put it up on my side. For the sake of, I love when we can set up. So we've said there's 5 levels. Do you think we could just list the levels first? So
Yeah,
everybody can kind of hear it and get a framework, and then we'll describe each level.
perfect. So first level, physical, we already mentioned. The second level is energy. And on the energy level, let's see, can you also maybe expand to like magnify the
Yep.
graphic?
Yep. Hold on. I'm getting there. Let me, since I wasn't prepared, let me do that again. Let me share this.
No worries.
And then figure out how to make it bigger.
I think there's like, I see like a little magnifying glass with a little plus sign in it that you might just click on, perhaps. Not sure.
Yeah.
In
it's
any
in the
event, I keep on talking about the
There we go.
that energy level. Uh, I think I probably kind of saw it.
Do you see it now?
Well, it's very small. I'm
Oh,
wearing my glasses. I'm doing my best, but there's no way.
I've made it huge. So on my screen, and I'm doing
Oh,
a share screen right now. So
mm,
if that's not working,
we can revert because I think I saw it better before. Yeah. Anyway, so the energy body, that is, we have more speaking to things like chi and breath therapy and things that affect energy. The nervous system is very energetic, chakras, meridians, um, and that is more in the realm of physics. We have and we can dive into each one a little more deeply soon. We have the third level of healing, which is the mental body. And really here, I think this is really your jammy jam with the thoughts and the beliefs and the attitudes and our mental field, our conscious and our subconscious, um, the will. I mean, there's a lot to say there. That's really, I think, and for you and your audience, this is a huge level or even portal. I'll talk about that in a minute. The intuitive body, our intuition, a trance state, dreams, magic, if out of body, spirits, possessions, all kinds of things that are largely considered out there and fantastical, but are also very real. And then we have the spirit body, which is the unified field of oneness with the divine, and how we can arrive to a sense of unity through prayer, chanting, meditation, um, and relegated to what we might know as spirituality. I don't know, it says they're also religion. Sometimes they are separate, sometimes they are together. And what is also really interesting about Dr. Klinghardt putting these all into such a succinct chart is that the more physical, the more objective, the more measurable. And so much of the data that I generate as a medical doctor is in this realm, looking at sodium and chloride and kidney filtration and liver function and cholesterol and blood sugar and all of these things that are measurable and very objective. And that the more you get into these higher levels, the more subjective, the more personal. And at the same time, although it doesn't say it here, Dr. Klinghardt is always wonderful in teaching that the higher you go and the more change that happens in the higher realms, in the mental, intuitive, and spirit body, the greater the health impact, the greater the role in the physical body. However, how do we measure that per se? Um, I once heard the sentence that we can be healed even if our disease is not cured. This concept that we can have something going on in the physical body, but our attitude towards it, our belief, our contextualization of it, can be one that's inclusive, where we can learn how to be in harmony and um, in a surrender to divine will, if that's how we can cognize or experience something, and in so arrive at peace, even if the physical outcome is not necessarily what we would wish. And so on and so forth, that these are things that can work in concert, or we can use one to inform the other. What I have found, and I think of oftentimes in the 5 levels of healing, that each one of these bodies is a portal. And oftentimes the portal through which people connect to me is in the physical body. At least that's what we're conscious of. However, the the feelings, the feelings that someone might have, hopefully coming into my practice and into a consultation where I have prepared myself and I have read on their story, and I'm holding space for someone. I'm holding space in my own consciousness for the reality of someone having a problem, perhaps one that they've asked for help in addressing, and that help has not been to the degree that they were hoping for, such that they're walking through a new door and asking the question, what can you help me? And what a vulnerable place that is. So I'm somewhere in the energy body, holding my consciousness around that vulnerability and speaking to it as someone comes in my attitude, in my physical demeanor, but also hopefully having the time and the space to acknowledge, wow, it's really hard to walk through a new door and you don't feel well, and yet you still have the courage to walk through a door despite not feeling well, despite having been disappointed, perhaps having walked through another door, and you're still walking through this one. What resiliency and what courage that takes. I'm so, so honored to meet you. That is, of course, not a, a prescription or a script. It's just something I experience in my heart. The being humbled by people's courage and by people's persistence and insistence to strive for better, which is our evolutionary path, and being able to hold that space and that consciousness. And so people may then launch into the story of their physical being but there's a framework around that that's energetic. And I think that that was just something that I had and held inside me, and that Dr. Klinghardt was able to make it explicit, um, and to give it a body and a consciousness and a framework and a rubric where you can look at all of these things and see how they fit together and inform each other, which is just so powerful and so valuable. And sometimes I'll just pull out this chart. I have it laminated in my office. And people will say, wow, this just sums it up, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's amazing. And what I love about, well, you, first of all, as a physician, you bringing this out gives you a broader perspective from which to treat somebody, which I would imagine makes them feel more hopeful, because it's another tool different than maybe what they've experienced before. It's adding in many different levels of points of view. So it's almost like, oh, she's going to have the answer, because look at all the different levels we're going to look at together. I have not put a chart together, but I have something similar to this that literally, and it's how I speak about it. But see, because I'm not a doctor, I get the, I'll talk about emotions and energy. And like I have a physical thing. I have a back pain. I have a MRI. I have an X-ray. I have a tumor. And what I just found really interesting, I don't think I've shared this with you. I did share it on the show back when I interviewed Dr. Kelly Turner on Radical Remission on her new docuseries. And I'm looking at, so we're looking at, physical level, energetic body, mental body, intuitive body, spirit body. So I have a client who has had triple negative breast cancer 3 times. And she came to me in between. She found Nasha around the third one, between the second and the third one, because she knew she was never going to do
Thank
sort of
God she
conventional.
found Dr. Nasha.
Yes. And then, so she had found me separate and then Nasha separate. Then when we came together, she was like, oh my God, 2 of my favorite people together. This is amazing. And then she's been a part of my tribe, active part of my tribe. And she, in the last 6 months, has had a reoccurrence of, it's not tested. They didn't do a biopsy, but it was a mass. It was a lump and it was in her breast. And she would feel it often and it was hard and it was big. And intuitively she thought, okay, I think this is the fourth time. But her attitude about this time was sort of very chill. But she was laying in my pool. It was before one of our group meetings. And she just said to me, yeah, well, I'm just going to get it cut out. I'm going to get it cut out. And I didn't say anything. I just looked at her and she looked at me because she knows me. And she goes, what? I know you. You're thinking something. And I said, well, let's just take a step back. If you've had this 3 times and it's coming back for a 4th time, let's look at what the lesson that needs to be learned is, and what can we do differently this time? I said, whether you cut it out or not is up to you, of course. I'm not making recommendations about that, but your energy around it, I think, needs to shift. I said, this is your body. As you know, in Chinese medicine, there's no such thing as a tumor. It's stagnant energy. It's your body. It is not something foreign outside of your body that's been placed inside your body. It is your body. So why don't we look at it with a little bit more love and compassion and tenderness of, what are you trying to tell me? And again, whether you cut it out or not, it's a different story, but your energy around it is this shoving it away and this detachment and this rejection of your body, this cutting off of. And so that conversation.
What
Plus,
happened when you spoke about that? Just that concept that it's part of you as opposed to separate from you. And how can we take in that message and what is required vis-a-vis the huge mental field of fear around anything related to the C word, related to a tumor, and that it is in the collective such a feared thing with such a strong mental field around it, that you have to find a space in between the collective mental field and your own relationship and your own wisdom. And you're saying, hold on 1 second, this is an invitation not to tune out, but to tune in. Oftentimes tuning in is so painful. The reason we can't tune in is because it's too painful. There's something there that we can't touch, and we need a way to process it. We need a way to, not necessarily, by the way, put words to it. I think that's the other thing, that so many things when we talk about these different bodies are experienced, and we might not be able to accurately language things. And I think that's also really tricky, because what you're relating to her is is an experience, is a confidence, is an attunement to your own body, and an attunement to truth with a capital T, about how energy works and how we manifest, in our physical body what we have not been able to handle somewhere else. But this. But this is how do we come into that knowing?
I think for her, and the how the story continues and why I brought this up is because there wasn't any other interventions. She had been seeing an acupuncturist. I think she does once a month, maybe it's once every 2 weeks. But that acupuncturist was also feeling the lump also. And, she was treating her whole body as Chinese medicine practitioners, of course, do. But then I think a couple weeks had passed, and she's part of a group where I see them all the time, and we're on a device and on like a Marco Polo group. And, and on one-on-ones, she would tell me, like, every time she saw me, she would say, I've really been thinking about what you said. And it stayed with her. It was so impactful. It was so like refocusing, that when she went back to her acupuncturist and she didn't want to tell her because she wanted an outside perspective, the acupuncturist said, whoa, this is different. It's softer and it's smaller. Like, this doesn't feel at all the same. And this person knew that because she feels it every day, and she saw it start to change. But she wanted someone else to also acknowledge that it wasn't just her, but someone else said, wow, this is very different. So it's shrinking and it's softening. And the only thing that shifted was her point of view and her. I'm looking at this chart here, right? The mental body and the energy body. And I'm going to say it was also intuition, because she's trusting her own intuition about what to do with this. She's letting her body lead her in her decision making about the treatment that she gets, about what she's going to repeat or not repeat, about what she's going to need to do next. And it's a very different but more empowering place that she's in, of not allowing this. I mean, when she told the whole group that she may have a fourth round, calm as cucumber. And they were all like, oh my God, like, that was amazing. Like, like, you're doing really, like, because she's like, she's like, and she was very easy about it. And again, there was a deeper trust in her own intuition, and a deeper trust in listening to her body. And especially now, with it starting to shift and change, it's added a fire and momentum into this. Whoa, if, some acupuncture and a mindset shift changes how my body is reacting, and now it's softening and it's shrinking, and who knows, maybe it'll go away. You know what I mean? It's very inspiring. But I'm looking at this list. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I was going to ask you about the pyramid aspect of this, because some people in quantum physics, the pyramid would go the other way. Like, it would be like, if you start with the quantum physics, everything underneath it changes. And it's not that we don't address the physical. It's that the physical doesn't by default address the spiritual or the intuitive or the mental or the energetic. But if you go in reverse, it will affect everything in the downline. And so I'm curious as to why the pyramid is sort of, I guess, is it because it's acceptable that you start with the physical body because most people can easily understand and connect with that?
Gosh, well, I can I can speak from my perspective, where people walk through my door because I'm a medical doctor. And so they're really expecting to stay in the physical, because that's what medicine is. Um, and and so maybe that's the base of the pyramid, just based on my orientation, coming from my training. And also, um, it's not just coming from my training, because I don't think that limits me. I feel really excited and curious, and um, in my curious, happy, joyful, exploratory, um, bliss place when I'm exploring all of these other things. So, but I think it's what's projected, maybe, or the expectation onto me. I also think, and this is where these things start interacting, that on the physical level, there are a lot of influences, especially environmental, be, um, that actually affect our ability to be connected to our other bodies. And I think that's actually one of the most profound things that I've gotten from Dr. Klinkhart's work. And I really do bless his name every day and feel so, so grateful for this incredible body of work. And he's also a brilliant practitioner and diagnostician and teacher in his own right. And also he has taken and collated all of this information in such a just genius way. So he has taught me so much about all of these environmental factors and how they can actually dampen, impinge our ability through our software, through our nervous system, through our vagus nerve, through our pineal gland. We actually have hardware that allows us to enter these other states. And these are practices in, you know, in various more traditional cultures, right, where we go into fasting and praying, and we know, for example, that fasting or praying or chanting actually serve to activate our hardware. We know, for example, that the vagus nerve, which is that highway of our parasympathetic nervous system that starts in the brain and literally is the gut-brain highway, is very much, when it's activated, allows us to experience, because it's hardware, we're hardwired this way to be able to experience a sense of flow and unity and connectedness. And that we can have impingement of the vagus nerve, we can have structural impingement, we can have toxicity, we can have, mercury fillings, and as that we can have poisoning of the hardware. We can have things that are not yet mainstream science, but we emerging data all the time that shows how electromagnetic frequencies are actually, and blue light is disturbing the pineal gland's ability to make melatonin, which is neuroprotective, and that we need our sensing system. Our pineal gland seems to be very critical here, almost like a radio tuner in the way that it works, and not just a factory for melatonin, but an ability to translate what is vibratory wave into feeling, into images. The same way a radio, there are waves out there and then can convert it into sound, or that a television can catch waves and convert it into image and sound. And that we have this ability to translate energy into. And so that these things are, in fact, always operating. And operating so that perhaps in order to be able to tune into, and I did mention this a little bit, I think, on our previous conversation on the love languages of the body. And I was relating a little bit of my own personal story where I didn't even know until I found out. And I found out by discovering a treatment and anchoring a new physical reality that I didn't know. I went through a healing that was accidental when I went through this big mercury detox that I didn't even know at the time was a big mercury detox, but I felt intuitively. And I looked at myself and I said, your life is saved. And I didn't even know exactly how, what, why, where, but I could feel, interestingly, this was actually my great teacher who I mentioned, how I connected to Dr. Klinkhart's work in the first place. I was describing to her in that first initial long fast that I did, where we were doing various mixtures of clay and psyllium, which is a wonderful kind of mops and brooms kind of slurry that you can drink, and that will really help offload toxins from the gut wall. Very, very helpful, very inexpensive, very accessible, very safe. And that I was introduced to the almighty coffee enema at that time. And that the combination of the two, doing a few rounds a day of this clay fiber mixture, alternating with liver, kidney, and lymph supportive herbs that were mineral dense and nutritionally supportive. And then the coffee enema was the perfect combination to clear lots and lots of toxins from the body. And then after the coffee enema, I would have the sensation almost of feeling electrified with just absolutely electricity, just almost like I'd stuck my hand in a socket. You know, my hair was standing on end. And what my teacher said to me was that was energy that had been blocked, stagnation, like you were saying, chi stagnation, that I didn't even know that I had had because I was just locked in my own experience. I didn't have another reference point at all. And all of a sudden, energy was, the channels were opening, and it literally felt like getting electrocuted. And that I can anchor that because I had that experience, that I can now anchor in my experience. I can feel it. I don't need someone outside to say it is or isn't true because it's my direct experience of being an electrical being. But I wouldn't have had that had I not had, one, the channels blocked, and then two, the channels opened, right? So my portal into anchoring the energy body as an experience was through offloading the physical body.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, I have someone I'm working with right now, and one of the things, she's into and loves doing all the emotional work and has been doing the emotional work for a while, but there's some, what appears to be chemical imbalances or past history of certain diagnosis. And, after looking at how some of this stuff up here in the mental and emotion and energetic body are not necessarily creating the shifts, my next question was, what's the brain chemistry like? What's the gut doing? And I would want to dive into, if given the opportunity, to have her do a Senesco test and look at the neurotransmitters and to do the GI map test and see what's going on with her gut. Because we have to go back to, is the container able to handle, able to process, able to experience? And I don't know that traditional therapies she's doing ever looks at any of that. It sounds like medication's really their only way. And I don't think pharmaceuticals are a lifelong thing. I don't think they're the answer or solution. I think they're a temporary bridge, but I foresee it being a problem in the future when we try to repress someone's expansion and not look at where the holes are, where the gaps are, where the disconnections are. So I found myself doing that literally this week and last week, going back to, and I think that's why when Naisha interviewed me for you guys, I was having upper limit in the moment. I was nervous, and I thought I had imposter syndrome. I'm like, who am I? Who am I to be having this? Who am I to be talking to these doctors about emotional processing? And then as we started talking, and I realized sort of this path that I've been doing, which is starting with the physical and then moving to the energetic and then moving to the mental and then moving to the intuitive and then moving to the spirits. Why I have spirit, purpose, energy. Like, that's literally the path that I've been following to take a person and find what's the problem and what is it that you're looking to do and how can I help you? And when the tools I have can't help the thing, well, I'm going to go get more tools. And without even realizing these were levels, to me, it was a level. It was like, okay, well, there's the physical training and the eating and the diet and the sleeping and the hormones. And okay, but if that doesn't answer the question, what's the next level? And then what's the next? And to me, it was almost like deeper. How do we go deeper? How do we go deeper? But in this way, it's more of how do we up level what this really is about, which isn't about, I mean, for some people who are generally healthy, obviously it's different when we're dealing with more chronic disease and illnesses where the physical body is really imbalanced and there's pain and there's suffering happening that we want to alleviate. But for the general population that just wants to feel better or look better in their bathing suit or look better naked, right? I was looking at, how do I help with the tools that I have? And I love that, again, like I'm saying, this resonates, of course, very strongly with me, because I feel like I've been doing this without knowing this existed and not knowing anyone has put it into a graphic. But not as this is so thorough, guys. You're really going to want to get this. You're going to come to the website and get this, because it literally lists like the diagnostic method and the medical treatments and healing techniques of each level. And what I want to know, Dr. Rahab, is when someone comes in and they come into this physical body, I know, because of your energy, because of your heart, because of your intention and your passion, I know they don't stay there. That's why we've talked about spirituality and medicine and the love language of the body. So I want to know when and how do you massage them up, or do you invite them to consider, or do you make recommendations is it really a case by case if someone comes in with physical, but they feel open and then you can go right away into everything? Or is there sort of a path that you take with people to gently massage them into considering other things that could help their situation?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for this. I just want to say when you said spoke to you guys that I'm one of a cohort, and there are more cohorts of practitioners getting trained in metabolic approaches to cancer, and that's an excellent operating system consciousness, and also speaks to all of these different terrain factors, and that the different terrain factors in Dr. Nisha Winter's metabolic approach to cancer is also a kind of levels. And so that we are all, I think, when we're doing this work deeply and with our whole mind, body, and spirit, and with intentionality and with love, we are all arriving at this idea that we're showing up, and the more that we're conscious and the more that we're in tune with the true complexity, mind, body, spirit of a being, that we want to feel them, see them, and that we have ourselves walked this pathway of our own discovery. I started, sharing with you my own pathway. And the more that I discover in myself, the more consciousness I can hold, the more I might dare believe, thinking of beliefs, that I can be of service and support to someone else. And of course, I set that intention, which is very, very important. And as far as the you, I always think it's the we. My experience has been it's the we, that it's this co-creation, that there's the making of safety, and that I am, it's true, like what you say, I am naturally very heart-based, and I really feel from my heart. I can definitely toggle into my brain, and of course I have tons and tons of data and academic training, and that's strong. But I think the place that we heal from is the place where we feel held in the heart space, where you feel the care, um, and that the most powerful chakra in our body is the heart chakra. Um, and when we go into a state of flow, it's when we get out of our head space actually and into our heart space. And um, when someone feels heard, when someone feels cared for, then it becomes safe to tell the truth, whatever that truth is, whatever emerges. Right before we got on this call together, I had written a message to someone I've been working with for a number of years. Tons and tons and tons of health trauma in their background. Cancer survivor, multiple complications from chemotherapy, some connection between the bladder and the intestines such that there was bacteria seeding into the bladder, and a kidney infection, kidney infection, kidney infection, kidney infection, antibiotics, 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 multi-drug resistant bugs leading to difficulty in treating another kidney infection, and then all of those IV antibiotics leading to just destruction of the gut. 3 years of nonstop diarrhea at the point when we first met. Electrolyte abnormalities, liver function abnormalities, inability to take more than a few steps, certainly could not walk unsupported, just hanging on by a thread. And so the first thing we needed to do was physical. She's come so far by leaps and bounds, doing so well on the physical. And yet there's a physical crisis, a physical crisis, a physical crisis, a physical crisis. Maybe 3 years into the work, and her own divine timing, with me just caring about her, listening to her, loving her, and being present, where she could tell me, in fact, there was something very traumatic recurring in her childhood. And yet, bringing that up is just so, so, so painful. Just in the past 2 days, another physical crisis. And because I've done so much work in the physical healing realm, I finally got to the place where I felt I could say to her, yes, it's physical. However, you're experiencing physical pain over and over and over again. And is it possible that any physical pain would be preferable to touching on somehow that psychic pain that might emerge if you weren't in physical pain. And how can we find a way to help you process that in a way that doesn't destroy you so that you no longer need to experience the physical pain? It was a question. I don't know the answer. There are answers emerging in various therapies. They're all portals. Do we connect to breath work? Do we connect to meditation? Do we connect to meditations of loving kindness? Do we connect to the message of Jesus Christ, who says, "Forgive us all our trespasses as we forgive all those who trespass us"? Can we feel, though? Not just the words, but can we inhabit the feeling? Can we connect? Or do I still need to do work on the physical plane so that the hardware is liberated enough that you can tap into the truth of your divine architecture? And this goes back to what we were speaking about in love language of the body, that we're designed for this. We're designed as children of God to be able to tap into that, into the God space, which is the ultimate truth with a capital T of all of us. I asked the question, who's the designer? And the answer, as far as all the twists and turns of our personal narrative and how can we transcend that, that personal narrative to hold space for these things that are deeply, deeply personal and also so incredibly universal. I think my own healing journey has been through serving others and realizing how much we are all united on that journey, on that search, on that evolutionary, on that questing path. And that when someone walks through the door, I recognize myself. I recognize my own questing. And I'm also brave, and I'm also resilient. And I also choose to evolve. And I also choose to ask the questions, even when the answers aren't forthcoming. And that I can be there in that embrace and help walk another human down that path that I've been walking, maybe a few steps ahead, hopefully, just so I can hold that space and say, it's okay, we can do this. Is ultimately our journey as beings, right? And it's what gets me up in the morning. I know it's what gets you up in the morning. It's what makes our life worth living. And I think the other thing here is that there's not exactly an end point. I see infinity in front of me. And anywhere on that path that someone is choosing to grow is somewhere I want to be. And that's what we're really meant to do on our ascendant pathway, our evolutionary pathway. And I think the 5 levels of healing just helps us anchor that and make it conscious and validate it, whereas otherwise it might be hoo-ha. But if we look at it, and then the other kind of cool thing about this, certainly in the privilege of my professional life, and kind of what you were saying, that there was a reframing of an attitude around how to feel or see this tumor in the breast. And as that was reframed, there was a shift in the physical, and that we can use the physical to validate, especially when we hold consciousness. Well, what's shifting here? If I'm and Joe Dispenza does wonderful work around this. He showed, for example, that for someone meditating 10 minutes a day, they could measure their immunoglobulin A level at the level of the gut. By the way, that's one of the markers on the GI map, because you mentioned it. And that actually being in that state of hopefully greater nervous system alignment can actually change our ability to protect our gut on a molecular level. When we start making those connections, which is the evolution of science, where we start really validating the true power of this. We know, for example, this is something Dr. Nasha says a lot, a fight with your, with a spouse or partner can raise your interleukin 6, which is an inflammatory marker, for 3 days. We can start mapping how these things interrelate, and that is just so powerful and mind-boggling, and it's not part of common practice yet. And I emphasize yet, because we have our thought leaders and those people who just were able to anchor this. God bless Dr. Klinghardt and God bless Dr. Nisha. People who are really, God bless Joe Dispenza, people who are really connecting these things and validating them and showing us the evidence. It's just so incredibly powerful and exciting. I'm so excited because I just admire Dr. Klinghardt so much. I can't believe I got to talk about this work with you.
Well, it lit you up so much. And I'm so glad you shared it with us and with me, because again, like I said to Dr. Kelly Turner, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for your book. Please don't hear this incorrectly, but I could have written this book 20 years ago. I already know all this. This is what my intuition has told me from the beginning, but I was never going to do data research, gathering of information, never in a million years. That is not my zone of genius or what I do, but the world needs what you do. I need what you do to a certain level to keep validating, but I kind of don't, because I'm not talking to those people anyway. I'm talking to people who get it and resonate with me, and that they don't need the proof, because they trust their intuition enough to know this is the truth. And to see something like this, where the only thing, like there's the 5 levels of healing, but only one of them are physical. We go to energy next, and then mental third, and then intuition fourth, and then spirit fifth. And it just is so, again, validating. As you said, it's validating to me because I've been doing this kind of work, but I don't have a study. I can't, I don't have data to show and to link all the things, because I'm too busy trying to help people just feel better, and then feel better, and then their body responds. Right. That's not where my zone of genius lies. It's not my purpose, but it's other people's purpose. Like you said, God bless Joe Dispenza and everybody else who's doing this work, who helps feed what we do, because you're in the field and they're in the field, but we're all playing this bigger role in getting this information out there. And whether, I don't know that I believe it will continue to grow. I don't think I actually believe it's going to be mainstream, at least not maybe in my lifetime, only because I think that there's such a long history of of like a lack of consciousness and a lack of awareness, and a not a desire to grow or to learn or to take responsibility. And I'm okay with that, and I can accept that. I want to appeal to the people. I want to draw in the people. I wanted you to have a podcast so that you could reach the people who are literally looking for you. They are searching all over and they can't find you, but they need you, and they know you're there. They just haven't found you yet. And for me,
Well, that is your genius. That is exactly your gift. And you carry your own unique and precious divine spark that you are gifting to the world through your work. And you are such a fiery presence, in that sense of the fire of transformation and transforming by putting the information out there with your own. There's such a charge to you, a positive charge to the energy that you put out there, and a passion that people can really connect to. And it's amazing. It's amazing to have these conversations with you and hear you speak and connect to your message and your soul mission statement. Of course, it's very aligned with mine, and it's very exciting to share this work and this consciousness with you. And we each kind of bring our own unique spark to this, where, you say, like, when I speak, there's a vibration to it, there's an energy to it. And when you speak too, I feel that so deeply. Yeah.
You're the hug, I'm the slap, and I don't, in a loving way, right? Right. Like my friend said that she went to collaborate with me on something. She's like, because I'm like the nice, like, I'll give you a hug, I'll affirm you, I'll be your cheerleader. You're the one pushing them out the door to go, like, take the action they're unwilling to take, and the combo is necessary. I know I'm not for everyone because of that fire. Not everyone can handle that fire because their mother was too fiery, or they're whatever. They want to do it on their own time, and that's fine. I'm not trying to change who I am. I want to be who I am, and those who are in alignment will follow suit, and the complementary energies will come in. And, this is a conversation. I love our conversations because it takes a deeper level. Naisha was the first one, and it changed my life because I had no idea that I was going to love her the way that I did, and that we would connect in the way that we did. And there was a doctor talking about emotions as much as I was. And I was like, what? Hold the press. You, like, emotions? I just was like, my mind was blown. And from there, I couldn't get enough, because I was like, yes, can somebody, I just felt validated in that moment that I have medical professionals who are literally talking about the same thing I am, but of course get more credibility because of what they've studied. And I wanted to be a part of that. I don't want to go back and do what you're doing. You're doing what you're doing. I want to do what I'm doing, but I want it to complement everything, and be that package and be that support and be that path that someone is looking for that doesn't know it exists. And that's why I told Miriam that she had to have a podcast, because as you know, she has a lot to offer the world, and we all want to hear it. I mean, I am sure you have 10 podcast episodes every time you meet with a client, things that would change someone's life if they were just a fly on the wall listening to your conversation. And it was
Well,
time to.
I think the client thing is really because it's that act of co-creation and it's the learning through the story. We have our stories, and I've learned this through the living practice of this in a space where I'm with someone. And again, my heart's desire is to attune to them and to support them. And that is what carries me into, I'm in, it's the middle of the night and I'm thinking about this dear, dear heart that I've been working with and all of her suffering, and that she wrote me back yet with another health crisis and another health crisis. And it took maybe a critical mass and also a certain amount of time where I felt like her, she has been so afraid and she has been so wounded. It wasn't that I didn't feel that before, but almost if I said this is emotional, it would discount in some way that I didn't want to discount the physical reality. And it was only when we had done the work over years of transmuting the physical reality successfully enough times, that I gave myself permission to touch upon that idea so gently. Um, because fear is powerful, and so many of us are um, living with, and we might not be conscious of them because these might be thoughts or beliefs. Um, and those thoughts and beliefs become so powerful, um, especially when they're not conscious, they drive a certain reality, and we don't know that we're creating it around us. And therefore, the gift of the physical, and this is going back to the love language of the body, can you imagine that a tumor recurring and recurring and recurring and recurring could actually also be interpreted as the love language of the body? I know you can, but that is such a radical idea. Not that I have to love it, but that the wound is there because it serves a purpose, because it's calling you to consciousness. I'll tell you one quick anecdote here vis-a-vis pain. When I was in medical school, I studied medicine in the south of Israel, in a hospital, Soroka, in a town called Beersheba. And Beersheba is kind of the gateway to the desert. And then there's a vast desert. And then this is another geography lesson. And then the next hospital is all the way at the tippy tip of the bottom of Israel in a town called Eilat, right before the border with Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula. And so this hospital where I trained has this huge catchment area of the whole desert, including a lot of Bedouin tribes. And Bedouin are traditionally nomads who are sheep herders, goat herders who live in the desert and are a very tribal people. And as such, tribes historically were more isolated and had a lot of intermarriage. And there's some very interesting genetic phenomena because of that, that is unique to one Bedouin tribe or another, just because of years and the evolution of marrying within the tribe. There is one tribe that is known for something called, I have to look it up again, but a congenital, meaning inherited genetically, inability to experience physical pain. And it is the most extraordinary thing. I went to a pediatric orthopedic clinic where many of these children who had this congenital pain deficiency syndrome, because without the pain signaling, they had terrible, terrible wounds. They had terrible, terrible orthopedic abnormalities. They would stub a toe and never know, and the toe could go gangrenous and fall off. They could have giant cankers and blisters on the bottom of their feet because they couldn't feel pain. They would have these, deep and gaping wounds and all kinds of things. And never until that moment could cognize so clearly the positive protective role that pain serves until you could see the devastation of a body without it. It was the most extraordinary thing that such a thing could exist, to teach us in such a concrete way on the physical what lack of pain might do.
That's amazing.
Isn't that
And it's
crazy?
such a great point of view. Catherine Rolt's been on the show. She wrote The Pain Paradox, and she talks about pain being potential. And that's one way to interpret and reimagine pain. But the way you just said it is also huge, because I also have met people who, like on a physical side with working out, when I was trying to see, like, do you feel that? Do you sense this happening in the body? Like, a lot of how I handled personal training was to, again, try to connect their brain to their muscles so they could activate their muscles without gross movements. I wanted to really strengthen that neurological connection so that they knew where to pull from, and we decrease injuries, we decrease wear and tear on the joints. And when someone can't connect to a muscle and over again, and can't feel soreness or can't feel pain, I started to learn. And of course, one person like literally was trained on how to disconnect from her body. But as you said, the danger of that is that then you don't know if you have something wrong in the signaling, it'll become worse. And that's a very interesting, I've never heard that about a tribe like that has that. And I can only imagine sort of what you witnessed. But I love that that your pain, and when you were mentioning about the tumor and the tumor and the tumor, when I told you, I think one of my Bibles is called Messages from the Body. And it's that relationship that the body's always talking to you. And to get curious and be like, hey, what's going on? Oh, you have a little thing over here. What's that about? Right. And if we change that energetic relationship, instead of it's a problem, I have to numb it. It's a problem, I have to cut it out. It's a problem, I have to get it, again, certain pharmaceuticals or things that numb us and that quiet it, that I don't take very many drugs whatsoever. And it's only a very rare, very extreme situation that I will have like an Aleve or a Tylenol, but generally I never take any of that. It's only homeopathic stuff. And I listen to the pain. So I'm like, well, this is telling me something and I have to fix it. I'll do massage and acupuncture and herbs, of course, but the pain is my message. And if I don't address this pain and I numb it, it will get worse. It might reappear somewhere else. But to me, it is that energetic expression that the body is crying out for help or attention. And
Are
it's
you
our job.
afraid of the pain, therefore, if you know its message?
Am I afraid of the pain?
Yes.
No, I don't. I'm
It
never afraid
doesn't
of
sound
pain.
like you are.
No, I
But
have.
what if someone is afraid?
Right. And but which is why this message is perfect for them.
Right.
I am not afraid of pain, nor am I afraid of
Well, when
death.
you understand it,
Yes.
when you
Right. That
understand it,
right.
when you
And
have a context around it, that this is a language, right? And it's a love language. It's actually your body caring for you and saying, you might want to think about tending to me in another way. And you attuning to that and saying, okay, let's try this, let's try that. What do I need to do and modify in terms of my behaviors or my thoughts to accommodate this message and to transmute it into something that is self-loving? Um, what if that same message is associated with fear? Then I won't necessarily know how to interpret it. I mean, it's like our tuner. And what if we've been conditioned to be afraid? What if the dominant resonance in us is trauma? I just think that it's so bio-individual, you know.
I want to speak to one more thing that you just brought up, because I was wondering if I was going to tell this story or not, if there was going to be a place for it.
Oh, I love stories. Tell it.
So by now, by the time we publish this, I have probably already started to enter in the realm of psychedelics and talking about it on the show. I won't bring
Oh,
it up
wow.
right now, but the reason why this particular story is going to come from a person who ended up not being the right match for me to be a leader or a guide or a messenger, because of just who we are as people, and it just wasn't a match. But one of the things that she asked me, because I believe from our conversation that she thought that some of the only ways to reach this spirit body was through this plant medicine, and how people would get real shifts. And maybe that's her experience, and I don't doubt that. But she had asked me in a kind of a little bit of a way, like, like, you can't be serious, is what I heard underneath it. Was like, well, do you think you can just do it with the brain or with words? And I said, yes, I see it every day, because
Absolutely.
I just had a client or I have a client right now whose entire life he has had pain, emotional pain and physical pain, because of the perceived relationship with his father, the interpretation and the core wound, because all of our core wounds are only interpretations. They're not reality. They're your reality, but they're one version of a reality. They're not reality. But his interpretation was his father didn't love him. His father didn't want to have anything to do with him, because when he'd travel a lot and he'd work, and when he was home, he wasn't paying attention to him, or he wasn't attending to him, or he wasn't spending time with him. And I explained to him, and this was one conversation, and this has been going on years, and he just had a therapy session and was coming to this Marco Polo conversation, talking about the therapy session where he was working with a therapist on his anger about this situation. And I went, okay. I said, we're not going to cover this in this program that we're doing because it's too short, but imagine, I said, there's a framework called the 5 love languages, right? And so just quickly, could it be possible that you and your father have different love languages? It feels to me, it seems to me, based on your description, that your father's love language was acts of service, that he was out there earning a living to provide for you. And that let's think about his upbringing. What was his father's relationship with him like? Did he know? I mean, we're going back, generations where the consciousness, emotion, touchy feely, quality time, men crying like this, we're going back into a time where they didn't have any tools or skills. This is not talked about as it is now. And I said, it sounds like your dad probably maybe he didn't have any skills. He didn't have any tools. So what did he do? He did the only thing he knew how to do, which was to provide. And so I just offered that as an option of a reinterpretation. And the next day, and it's been going on for 2-3 weeks now, he keeps telling me, can it really be that simple? Like, I think about my father now, and where I had pain, I now feel tears of love. I see how much he loves me in everything he did for me. We tuned him to a different frequency of an interpretation, which was love. And now there's literally at this point, it's only been a couple of weeks right now.
Beautiful, JJ.
No
so
anger
beautiful.
or pain to be found. It has been replaced with love and feeling loved. He feels more loved by his father now than he ever had his entire life. It's a non-issue. And all we did was we looked at it from another point of view and we reinterpret it, and it has disappeared, and it has trickled into other aspects, and it has been lasting, and the momentum has been building. So when I look at this chart, so I tell that story because when I look at this chart and people think there's only perfect example of mental body. Yeah. Mental body is the third. Beliefs. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. When we look at the beliefs shape the opinions and the interpretations, which creates the feelings. So the mental body like you called it a portal. They're all portals, and there is no one way, and there is nowhere. It's whatever way calls to you first, but ultimately we need all of them at some point, right? And to be fluid with that, and because for some people that change of the story wouldn't have had the same impact. For this person, it's freaking life changing. And it was one simple conversation. So I love this because it also validates why I'm studying this plant medicine now, is to add in where my beliefs are about it. How do I feel about it? What are my opinions? where do I think it's abused, or where do I think it has a purpose? Where do I think it's not necessary? Where do I think it's super necessary? I don't know. I'm learning, but I know, and I'm so thankful for this conversation, as I always am with you, of this, literally this chart, because when I was literally recently questioned, like, do you think you can just get there mentally? I was like, yeah, not to the same place, maybe not to the same amount of neural pathways and new pathways that are open, but yes, we can alter frequencies, which in turn changes the way we look at the world, the way we interpret things, which does create new neural pathways. So anyway, I was holding on to that, and I wasn't necessarily thinking it was appropriate, but I think it is in the power of, I want to exhaust people's ability to do it for themselves. I want you to not need anything but some tools. And that's always been my goal in my show, which is why I know you're going to be super successful in your show, is because all I have done for 8 years is to provide tools people can use, offered them help when they need it, containers and structures for more detailed support and guidance for the ones that want to take it to the next level. But I've had, and I still get people that write to me that say, my whole life has changed since I found your show, and I've never met them. They've never paid me. They've bought nothing. because the show acts as a way to educate and to inspire and to give them real world tools to use right now in their life to feel better, to interpret differently, and to take all the things we're doing and we're talking about and make and integrate them into their lives so their lives can be different. So I
Right.
know you're going
That's
to
your
be
love
so,
language.
that's my
Your
love
love
language.
language. Yes, it is.
Well, it's going to be part of yours, not maybe your education will be your love language to people because it will be inspirational and life changing because you are, and it's, I already know, I know it's not even a question that your clients, even just your clients you have right now, will thank you for it because you'll be able to put into words and you'll be able to catalog and capture for them to listen to it over and over again because like me, you have such a rich depth of knowledge and information that you compact so eloquently into such a small amount of time that most people can't get it all the first time. They need to, I have people tell me to listen to my show like 3 and 4 times. They're going to need to listen to your show many times because they're only going to be able to pick out pieces of it each time, but they'll be able to take so much more when you give it to them in this kind of package. So I hope that everybody runs to jjfilzanes.com/5 levels of healing to download this chart and be connected and get subscribed to and find Dr. Miriam Rahav's new podcast, which we're excited to launch.
Thank you so much, JJ. I really look forward to that launch. Stay tuned, everyone.
Yes. And more to come.
More to come.